Hey everyone, in this video, we're going to do an overview of the Evolv Reports module. I'm going to show you how to get to the module and a couple of commonly used features or ways that the reports module could be helpful for you. So right now I'm logged into Evolv, and Evolv just brought me straight to the last page that I was on, in this case, the enrollment information page. As you might know, right now we're in the client module, which is this module that looks like a single person by itself. This is the client module. We need to navigate over to the reports module where we can run reports. So to do that, I'm going to click on this icon up here that looks like a piece of paper. And if I hover over it, you'll see that it tells me reports, all agency-wide reports. So when I click on the reports module, just like the client module, it's going to bring me back to the last page that I was on. So when you click on that icon, it might not bring you to this page, but you will be in the reports module. And I know that I'm in the report module because it says so right at the beginning of this path right here. Whereas when we were in the client module, it told me client right at the beginning here. So now that I'm in the reports module, I can navigate to the section and page for the type of report that I need to run. So when you enter the reports module, you might see a navigation bar that looks like this, where it's not completely expanded. So you can take a look at the different reports that are available by expanding each section and looking through. And remember that the reports that are available to you are going to depend on your permissions. I'm logged in as myself right now, so I can see a lot of the administrative reports that are available to me. If you're a case manager, you might have a couple less options. If you are a program director or manager or a clinical department director, you might see more options here, or options that are very similar to what I'm seeing. So just keep in mind that not everybody has the same options available to you, but you should have access to the types of reports that are helpful for your position. So under general, I can pull a client roster here. I can see enrollments if I'm trying to look at group information. I can look at missing diagnosis information. If I'm doing work with insurances, I can pull a benefit assignment report here. I can also look at service and treatment reports available by clicking on the plus sign. And you'll see there's a client services report available to me. So I can run a report to look up information about services. Maybe I want to see services that are provided in a certain date range or by a certain worker. And we'll do additional videos on popular reports that are helpful for staff to run. I can see a report on service entries, how many entries were provided, what kind of entries were done during a certain date range. So you'll see that there's a lot of reports available here. So services and treatment in general are the two most common sections for most of our staff members for reports that you might want to run. Now I'm going to go back to the client services section so I can show you how to save a query in this report module. So let's say every month I want to know how many services were provided to a specific client. And I know I'm going to be running this every single month, so I want to be able to save it so that I can run it easily every month. The first thing I'm going to do is select how I want the report to show up. And I know that this is a required field because the words are showing up in bold here. So I know that that's required in order for me to run the report. Also, you'll see that there's a slight box around this text, which means that I can click on it. So when I hover over this, my mouse turns into a hand, so I can click on this like a button, and then this pick list will show up, and it'll show me my options on how the report selection can function. So there's a lot of different options available to you. Aggregate totals will just show you totals of how many services were provided, but you wouldn't be able to, for example, click on a service to open it up and view information about that specific service. It's just going to give you totals of, if you select like what type of service you want, it's just going to give you a total for that. I can sort it by program and then by client if I'm trying to look at all the services provided across different programs. I can do it by program and client and then service state. I can do it by program and service facility and then client. And another popular option is program and then worker and then client and then date. So let's say I'm trying to figure out how many services were provided to client Aphrodite, and I want to see at Aphrodite's program which workers were providing services to her. I would select that last option. So often if you're a supervisor running a report for services, it's helpful to choose this last option, because then you can see within your program which of your staff members, which of your workers were providing services. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. Now these options here for parameter, the one that's going to be most important to most folks running reports is approved. And approved means that the service has been signed. So if you're at an MRO program, for example, and you want to know how many of your MRO services are counting towards your total, well, you're only going to be looking at services that are signed. If you're in ACT and you want to know about fidelity requirements and how close you are, you're only going to want to look at services that are signed. So you're going to want to make sure that you have the approved button checked off. Now here's where I can really customize the report by entering a parameter. So right now there's no parameters. So if I ran this report, it would really just give me every single service that was provided, and we don't want that. The first thing I'm going to do is set my parameters. And the first thing I need to do is select what type of parameter or what type of requirement I want to set for this report. So I'm trying to find services provided to client Aphrodite. So the first thing I'm going to do is choose her as the client. And I can see what types of parameters are available to me by clicking on this menu button. And when I do that, this pick list shows up that shows me all the different types of parameters or requirements I can set. The very first option is the one I want, client. And then when I choose that parameter, I can go all the way over to the value column and choose a value. So I'm telling this report that only show me results for a specific client, and now I'm going to tell it which client I want. And I can do that by searching the client, and I'm going to do that by last name. I want Aphrodite. And so now it's telling me the parameters that are set. It's going to look for services provided to a client, and it's going to look for services specifically provided to Aphrodite. Now, I know that Aphrodite is enrolled in multiple programs, but I only want to see my program, which in this case is GAP. So the second thing I'm going to do is tell it to only look for services provided to GAP. To do that, I'm going to add another parameter by clicking on this button. And then I see two options that might be what I'm looking for. I see facility providing service, and I see program providing service. A lot of what Gilead calls our programs really are in Evolv as facilities. So some examples of this are Women's Home, Anchorage Home, Valor. All of those programs are going to show up as facilities because they're locations within a certain type of program. So if I click on facility and then I try to enter a value and I search for GAP, I see that it does come up as a facility. So I can go ahead and click on that. Now, the other option that was available to me was program providing service. So if I hit that and I try to look for GAP, and this one I don't even have to search, it just gives me all the options right here. I see that GAP by itself is not an option available to me. ACT team is available to me. Community support program is available to me. If I was working at Gateway, for example, Gateway Community Support Program, I see WISE directly is available to me, but I don't see GAP on this list. And that's because GAP and SCAP would fall under our supported apartment programs. So if I'm looking for services provided to GAP, I just need to make sure that I have selected the correct facility providing service here as GAP. For program providing service, I could select supported apartments if I want to be thorough, but it won't make a difference because there's only one type of program for GAP. If I was doing a report for one of our outpatient clinics, then it would be really important to do both facility and program, because if I just ran it for program type outpatient clinic, it would show me results for both of our outpatient clinics, which I might not want. So I would have to choose the program providing service as outpatient clinic and then facility, either Chester or Middletown. For GAP, I'm just going to be thorough and select both the facility and the program providing service. And now I'm good to go. So I know that every month I'm going to be running this report to see how many services were provided at GAP for this client, Aphrodite. Make sure that you're only showing me results that were signed, and I want you to order them by program, worker, client, and service date. And I know I'm going to be running this exact report every single month. So I can save it as a query. So I'm going to do that just by hitting this button, Save Query. Now you'll notice I did not enter date ranges here. And that's because if I entered a date range right now and then hit Save Query, it's going to save that date range in the query. And then every month I'm going to have to change the date again by deleting it and then re-entering it. So by leaving this blank before I save it, it's going to be a reminder to me that I need to make sure that I'm entering the correct dates that I want every month when I run this report. So I recommend not saving dates when you save the query. Enter all the other information that you need and leave the date fields blank so that you can remind yourself to fill them in when you do run it for real. So I'm gonna hit Save Query. And now a box pops up that allows me to name it. So I can name it Client AZ Services-GAP. And this is just a name that's gonna show up for me. I will remember that the client AZ is Aphrodite Z. So this is helpful for me. You want to make sure that when you save it with a description that's going to be helpful to you so you can remember exactly what the query was that you set up. Now, if I click anywhere else on this box, now the update button becomes available to me and I can hit update to save. Now, the next time I come back to this report, so let's pretend I'm back on the reports page for the first time next month. This is what my screen's going to look like the next time I come back here. Now I could go through the steps of manually setting up the report to be exactly what I want for Aphrodite's GAP services, but I also saved it as a query. So I can access exactly what I saved by clicking on the Use Queries button. And when I click on that, it's going to show me a list of all the queries that I've saved in the past. And you'll see the one that we just saved together, which is Client AZ Services-GAP. So when I click on that, it automatically fills in all the data that was here when I saved the query. And you'll notice the date field is blank. So this is a reminder to me that before I actually run this, I need to fill in some dates here. So I want to know all the services that were provided in the previous month. So I'm just going to fill in the dates of the full previous month, and you can manually type it, or you can click on this calendar button right at the side and then select the dates that way. And once you have the dates in place, you can hit the preview button. Now when my results pop up, I can see that during the month of July, and I know that because it shows me the date range that I ran it for right at the top. During the month of July, only one service was provided to Aphrodite by this worker, and I can see the information from the service come up here. So it tells me the service type, in this case a case management service, tells me the date and the time, how long the duration was, where it was provided, what type of activity it was, face-to-face. Some other options might be if it was provided via telephone, that would show up here. And the helpful thing about running a report using this format, the program worker client service date format, is that when I hover over the date, my mouse turns into a hand. And I can click on this date. And the service note is going to pop up that was written for this service. So I can see all the details, and I can also look and read exactly what happened in the contact. I can see the treatment links provided. I can check whether there's a notation. So this is helpful maybe if I have a new staff member and I want to see what their notes are like. I can run a report to see the services provided by that staff member, and I can open up and easily see all of their notes just in one place. So that is how you can use the report. So this is a really helpful feature from the reports module, being able to open up the service notes. And if more services were provided, those notes would all show up here as well. So in this case, there was only one service provided to this fake client during July, but if there was 100 services provided to this client, they would all show up here, and I could easily just go through and click on the date for each of those services, and then I could open up and view each individual note. So when I'm done with the report, I can just close it using this internal close button. And if I needed to run any other reports, I could change the parameters here. If I wanted to delete something, so let's say I don't want to see services provided just to Aphrodite anymore. Now I want to see all services provided at Gap during this date range, but not specifically for Aphrodite, just for any client. I could click on this button on the side, this gray button right here, and then it gives me an option to open the parameter in a new window. We really don't ever use that function, so you can just ignore that. But this one is a critical one, delete. If I hit delete, it's going to ask, do you wish to delete the current record? Meaning, do you want to remove this parameter or this request from the report? And I'm going to say yes. And now a little X is going to show up to show me that this is no longer being included. So if I hit preview, it would show me all services for all the Gap clients, and it would not include this. Now, making changes here does not affect the saved query that I have. If I clicked use queries and selected the one that I just saved, the client AZ services-gap, if I selected this, it's gonna still include that parameter for the client Aphrodite. That's not gonna change. Nothing about the query is gonna change here until I hit that save query button. Now, let's say a couple months down the line, I no longer need this query and I don't want it to show up here. I can delete it by clicking delete queries and then clicking on the one that I want to delete. So let's say I want to delete this query that I just created. I could click on it and it's going to ask me, are you sure you wish to delete it? And I can hit yes. Note that once you delete it, there's no way to get it back. You're going to have to set it all up again. So you should really only delete it if you're positive that you won't need it again. So that's the reports module. There's a lot of things that you can do here, but you might need to work with a supervisor or someone else who's really familiar with Evolv in order to run it. If you have specific questions about how to run a report to get certain data, you can always submit a tech support ticket to techsupport@gileadcs.org, and someone from the IT department can help you put together a report that is helpful.